Then I have to walk into the frame. Well, hello, Pace Success students. No, EBA students. Let's look at lesson 50, page 217. We are on track for the year. My goal is to get to around lesson 120, 115, I think it is technically, by the end of the year. So being at 50 now means with 2 more weeks, we are right on track. Okay, so cool. In the middle of page 217, you see where it says the square root of x minus 2, the quantity squared. Can you read that to me, Michael? X minus 2, the quantity squared.
Oh, where is this?
Equals 3. Right in the middle of the page, right above 50b. Okay? Now, does this look familiar? We've done some problems like this, haven't we? And you do the square root of both sides, which means this pops out. So you get x minus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 3. Then you bring the 2 over, so you have 2 plus or minus the square root of 3. And you're done. That's the answer. Okay? What we're going to talk about now is the steps in front of this. Okay? So I'm going to take x squared plus 4x minus 2. The first thing I'm going to do is move the 2 to the other side. Okay? So I just did that in my head. You add the same thing to both sides, or the other rule is if you change sides, change signs. So pop it over here, it becomes positive 2. Now I want to factor this so that I have a quantity that times itself. Okay, so quantity squared will equal 2. See how that looks familiar to what we started with here? Well, I know that this first term has to be x, but I need to figure out what is this last term going to be. So the rule is we take half, I always call it the middle term, because in the original equation it was the whatever's in front of the x. So you take half the middle term, and then we're going to square it. So what's half of 4? 2. What's 2 squared? 4, right? Okay? So I'm going to use a different color so you see this. So out of the thin blue air, I'm just plucking 4 out of the air and plugging it in on this side. Well now, because this says this is equals, I have to keep the 2 sides balanced. So if I just plugged in a 4 there, it's not balanced anymore. But I can add 4 on this side of the equation, okay? And then 2 plus 4 is 6, and then this becomes x plus 2 and x plus 2. Because 2 times 2 is 4. And then if you do the FOIL method first, the outer is 2x, the inner is 2x, so 2x plus 2x is 4x, and then 2 times 2 is 4. So that gave me the same quantity, x plus 2, the quantity squared equals 6. Then from there, it's exactly like we've been doing before Christmas break. You do the square root of both sides, bring the 2 over, so it becomes, oh, I'll go ahead and finish it for you just to, plus or minus the square root of 6, bring the negative 2 over, always put that in front, and then plus or minus the square root of 6, and you're done. Okay, so the new thing that we've got to learn and practice. Can you read this for me? Okay.
Half the middle term, square it.
Okay, so in the original equation, whatever comes in front of the x term, you take half of that, square it, okay, and then you add that to both sides. All right, let's do one more, do a couple more examples. I'm going to have you guys come up to the board in a minute and do one, but I'm going to choose a harder one that has a fraction in it. Ho, ho, ho. Okay, so Milka, would you read on the bottom of page 219, example 50.3? Hang on. Okay, go ahead.
X squared equals 5x minus 5.
All right. So I'm going to do x squared. I'm going to bring the 5x over, so minus 5x. But I'm going to leave the negative 5 over here on the right. Okay? Now, I need to add something to both sides. What's the rule say, Michael?
Half the term squared.
So negative 5 times 1/2 would be negative 5 over 2. But then I'm going to square that. So what does that give me? 25 over 4. Okay, so I'm going to add 25 over 4 here and add 25 over 4 here. Okay, now the whole goal of doing this is I want to end up with a quantity squared. Well, let me write it this way first. So what's going to go in the front of these two parentheses? X, right? Good. And then because this is a negative, I know I'm going to do a minus here. What fraction am I going to write here? What fraction times itself equals 25 fourths?
5 over 4? Or 5 over 2?
5 over 2, good. 5 over 2, 5 over 2. And now if I did the FOIL method, first times first is that, the outer would be negative 5/2 plus another negative 5/2, which would be negative 10/2. And 10 divided by 2 is 5, so that would give me negative 5x. Okay? And then the negative 5/2 times negative 5/2 is 25 fourths. So I'm going to erase this first one, and I'm just going to write this as the quantity squared. Do you understand that? Okay. Now let's add. What's negative 5 plus 25? Well, if I get a common denominator, this would be negative 20 over 4, right? So negative 20 over 4 plus 25 over 4 would be 5 fourths. Okay, walk me through the last step, Michael.
You would square everything.
Okay. Plus or minus the square root of 5 over the square root of 4. But what is the square root of 4?
2.
2. Okay, and then the last step.
Bring the 5 over 2 on the other side.
Yep, so we'll do 5 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2. Okay, now the big reveal. Turn the page, page 220. Yes! Top of page 220, we got it right. Okay. So I'm going to have you come up to the board and do some of these practice problems with me. And then we actually kind of got behind on doing math tests. So Monday we're going to do a test. Okay, so we got to get our heads back in the game here today and tomorrow. Test Monday, and then Tuesday we'll do the second half of lesson 50, and we'll talk about imaginary numbers, lesson 51, which is going to blow your mind. So make sure you're not sick on Tuesday so we can talk about that. All right, so hopefully that helps you, Fiona. And we're gonna have you two up here and do a few problems before we go to break.